Single dad pretends to sleep to test the quiet waitress. Then he freezes when he sees what she does. The diner was silent, save for the faint clink of coffee cups and the hum of a jukebox that hadn't worked in years. Ethan Cole, a broad-shouldered man with tired eyes and a 5-year-old daughter asleep against his arm, sat slumped in the corner booth. His calloused hands rested on a cracked leather wallet, empty except for a crumpled photo of his late wife. Everyone in the small town of Willow Creek knew Ethan's story, the war veteran who'd lost everything, but kept fighting for his little girl, Lily. Tonight, though, something made the air feel heavier. Across the diner, Grace Harper, the shy new waitress with a braid that fell past her shoulders, moved like a ghost, clearing tables with a quiet grace. No one knew much about her, only that she'd shown up a month ago, keeping to herself. Ethan, pretending to doze, watched her through half-closed eyes. He'd seen the way she lingered near Lily, slipping an extra pancake onto her plate when she thought no one noticed. Tonight he wanted to know why. As Grace approached their booth, Ethan held his breath, feigning sleep. Lily stirred, her tiny hand clutching his sleeve. Then Grace did something that made Ethan's heart stop. She leaned down, tucked a small, folded note into Lily's coat pocket, and whispered something so soft Ethan couldn't catch it. When she walked away, Ethan's eyes snapped open, his pulse racing. What was in that note? And why did it feel like Grace was hiding something far bigger than a kind gesture? The diner's neon sign flickered outside, casting a red glow across Ethan's weathered face. He didn't move, didn't dare touch the note yet. His mind churned. Was Grace just being kind, or was there something more? He'd learned to trust his instincts in the war, and something about Grace's quiet demeanor didn't add up. She wasn't just a waitress passing through. Ethan Cole hadn't always been this guarded. 5 years ago, he'd been a different man, laughing easily, planning a future with his wife, Sarah, and their newborn, Lily. But a car accident stole Sarah, leaving Ethan to raise Lily alone while battling the ghosts of his time in Afghanistan. The scars on his hands and the nightmares that woke him at 3 a.m. were reminders of a life he couldn't escape. Willow Creek was supposed to be a fresh start, a quiet town where he could give Lily the stability she deserved. He worked construction by day, picked Lily up from kindergarten, and spent nights at the diner because it was the only place Lily felt safe enough to eat without crying for her mom. Money was tight. Ethan's pride stung every time he counted change for a coffee, but he refused handouts. The townsfolk pitied him, whispering about the broken soldier and his poor little girl. Ethan hated their pity, but he swallowed it for Lily. She was his anchor, his reason to keep going. Her big blue eyes, so like Sarah's, held a quiet strength that broke and mended his heart every day. Grace Harper, though, was a mystery. She'd appeared in Willow Creek like a shadow, taking the waitress job at Millie's diner without fanfare. She spoke little, smiled rarely, and moved with a purpose that felt deliberate. Ethan had noticed her watching him and Lily, her eyes softening when Lily giggled or spilled syrup on her dress. At first he thought it was kindness, but the extra pancakes, the free hot chocolates, the way she lingered, it felt personal, too personal. And now, that note in Lily's pocket burned a hole in Ethan's thoughts. As the diner clock ticked past midnight, Ethan unfolded the note, careful not to wake Lily. The words, written in neat cursive, made his breath catch. "You're stronger than you know, little one. Don't let the world dim your light." It was kind, almost maternal, but at the bottom a single initial, G, and a tiny hand-drawn star. Ethan's jaw tightened. He'd seen that star before on a necklace Sarah used to wear. Was it a coincidence, or was Grace connected to his past in a way he couldn't yet understand? The next evening, Ethan returned to the diner, Lily skipping beside him, clutching a crayon drawing of a rainbow. He hadn't confronted Grace about the note, not yet. He wanted to watch her, to understand her intentions. The diner was busier tonight, filled with truckers and locals nursing beers. Grace moved through the chaos with her usual quiet efficiency, her eyes flicking toward Ethan and Lily every so often. Ethan's gut twisted. He wasn't sure if he felt protective or paranoid. Lily, oblivious to her father's tension, climbed into their usual booth and started coloring. "Daddy, can I give my picture to Miss Grace?" she asked, her voice small but bright. Ethan forced a smile. "Sure, kiddo." But let's eat first, okay? He couldn't shake the image of that star, the one Sarah had worn until the day she died. It was a custom piece, a gift from her mother before she passed. Ethan had buried it with her, unable to bear seeing it on anyone else. So how did Grace know to draw it? As the night wore on, Ethan pieced together what he knew about Grace. She lived in a small apartment above the hardware store, kept to herself, and never mentioned family. Millie, the diner's owner, said Grace had shown up with a single suitcase and a resume that listed no prior jobs, just a vague caregiver role. The townsfolk liked her, but found her distant, like she was carrying a weight she wouldn't share. Ethan understood that kind of weight. He saw it in the mirror every morning. Then it happened. A man in a tailored suit walked into the diner, his presence jarring against the worn linoleum and chipped mugs. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on Grace. She froze, her tray wobbling in her hands. The man's smile was cold, calculated, and Ethan's instincts screamed danger. Before he could stop her, Lily hopped out of the booth, clutching her drawing, and ran to Grace. "Miss Grace, I made this for you." Grace's face softened, but her eyes darted to the man in the suit. She knelt to take the drawing, her hands trembling. "Thank you, sweetheart," she whispered, but her voice cracked. The man stepped closer, his shadow falling over them. "Grace," he said, his tone sharp. "We need to talk." Ethan's heart pounded. He didn't know why, but he stood, placing himself between Lily and the stranger. Grace's eyes met his, wide with something like fear or guilt. As Ethan ushered Lily back to the booth, he overheard the man hiss, "You can't hide forever." Grace, not from him. Ethan's blood ran cold. Who was Grace running from? And why did it feel like her secret was about to unravel everything he thought he knew about his life in Willow Creek? The man in the suit left as quickly as he'd come, but the air in the diner felt charged, like the calm before a storm. Grace busied herself behind the counter, avoiding Ethan's gaze. He didn't push her, not yet. Lily was watching, and Ethan had learned long ago to shield her from his battles. But his mind raced. The man's words echoed, "You can't hide forever." Hide from what or who? That night, Ethan tucked Lily into bed in their small, drafty rental house. She clutched her stuffed rabbit, whispering, "Miss Grace looked sad today, Daddy. Can we help her?" Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to protect Lily's heart, but he couldn't ignore her question. "We'll see, kiddo," he said, kissing her forehead. After she fell asleep, he sat at the kitchen table, the note from Grace in his hands. That star, it wasn't just a coincidence. It couldn't be. The next morning, Ethan did something he hadn't done in years. He dug through the box of Sarah's things he kept in the attic. Her clothes, her journals, her favorite scarf, they were all there, untouched since the funeral. He found her old sketchbook, filled with doodles of stars and flowers. On the last page, a sketch of the necklace with a note in Sarah's handwriting. "For my sister, wherever you are." Ethan's heart stopped. Sarah had never mentioned a sister. Was Grace? Over the next week, Ethan watched Grace more closely. She was kind to everyone, but with Lily, she was different, patient, gentle, like she was making up for lost time. One evening, when Lily spilled her milk, Grace didn't just clean it up. She sat beside her, teaching her how to fold a napkin into a swan. Lily giggled, and Ethan felt a pang he hadn't felt since Sarah. He wanted to hate Grace for stirring those feelings, but he couldn't. She was too real, too broken in her own quiet way. One night, after closing, Ethan stayed late, helping Grace stack chairs. It was the first time they'd been alone. "Why do you do it?" he asked, his voice low. "The extra food, the notes." "Why, Lily?" Grace hesitated, her hand stilling on a chair. "She reminds me of someone I lost," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone I couldn't save." Ethan wanted to press her, but the pain in her eyes stopped him. For the first time, he saw her not as a mystery, but as a woman carrying her own scars. As Ethan drove home that night, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stay away from Grace Harper. You don't know what she's capable of." Ethan's grip tightened on the wheel. Whoever Grace was, someone powerful wanted her found, and they knew Ethan was getting too close. Ethan didn't tell Grace about the text. He didn't trust her enough, not yet. but he couldn't ignore the pull between them. Over the next few days, their interactions grew warmer, more open. Grace started sharing small stories, how she loved stargazing as a kid, how she'd once dreamed of being an artist. Ethan found himself talking too about Sarah, about the war, about the guilt that kept him awake at night. It was slow, tentative, but real. Lily noticed too, her smiles brighter when Grace was around. One afternoon, Grace surprised them with a picnic at the park. Lily ran ahead, chasing butterflies, while Ethan and Grace sat on a blanket watching her. "She's special, Ethan," Grace said softly. "You're doing right by her." Ethan looked at her, really looked, and saw not just the waitress, but a woman who understood loss in a way he did. For a moment, he let himself imagine a future where Lily had someone else to lean on, where he wasn't so alone. But the peace didn't last. The man in the suit returned, this time with another figure. A woman in her 50s, impeccably dressed, her eyes cold as steel. They cornered Grace outside the diner, and Ethan overheard fragments of their argument. "You can't keep running, Grace. He's coming for you. The money isn't yours to hide." Ethan's protective instincts kicked in. He stepped outside, his voice steady but firm. "Is there a problem here?" The woman's gaze flicked to him, dismissive. But the man smirked. "You're in over your head, soldier," he said before they left. That night, Grace finally broke. In the diner's empty kitchen, she told Ethan the truth. She was Sarah's estranged sister, Grace Harper Langley, heiress to a billion-dollar fortune she'd fled years ago. Her father, a ruthless businessman, had disowned her when she refused to marry for his gain. She'd been hiding in Willow Creek trying to rebuild a life, but her past was catching up. The note, the star, it was her way of connecting with Lily, her only family left. Ethan felt betrayed. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded. Grace's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to drag you into my mess. I wanted to know her." "To know you?" Ethan walked out, his heart torn between anger and the connection he couldn't deny. The next day, Ethan found Grace packing her apartment. She was leaving, convinced her father's men would hurt anyone close to her. "I can't let them touch Lily," she said, her voice breaking. Ethan stood in the doorway, Lily clutching his hand. He saw the fear in Grace's eyes, but also the love she'd tried to hide. "He made a choice to stay," he said. "We'll face it together." Grace shook her head, but Ethan stepped closer. "You're not alone anymore. Neither am I." For the first time, Grace let herself cry, and Ethan pulled her into a hug, Lily wrapping her small arms around them both. They prepared for the worst. Ethan called in favors from old army buddies, and Grace used her knowledge of her father's tactics to stay one step ahead. When her father's men came, they found a united front. Not just Ethan and Grace, but the entire town of Willow Creek standing behind them. The diner's regulars, Millie, even the sheriff, they all knew Ethan's story and saw Grace's heart. Her father backed down, unwilling to face a public scandal. Months later, the diner was brighter, filled with Lily's laughter and Grace's quiet smiles. Ethan and Grace weren't just friends anymore. They were a family, piecing together their broken parts. The note with the star hung framed on Lily's wall, a reminder that love could find its way through the darkest cracks. As the sun set over Willow Creek, Ethan watched Lily and Grace draw stars on the sidewalk with chalk. The narrator's voice, warm and cinematic, closed the story. Sometimes heroes don't fight wars or chase fortunes. Sometimes they just open their hearts, stand their ground, and remind us that family isn't found in blood alone. It's built in the quiet moments when no one's looking, but someone's always there.